Hello and welcome to Gardening in 58 North. So in this video I'd like to give you guys an update on my Penjing plant here. So it's been over 2 years since I've done an update, and to be honest I've kind of neglected my Penjing. I've been watering it, keeping it fed as well, but I've not done any pruning at all, and the whole thing got a bit out of hand and needs a hard prune now. But there's a couple of interesting strange things that are going on that I'd like to show you with this bonsai. This is a ficus benjamina. It's normally seen as a large houseplant, but you can often make it into a bonsai as well. I've made this into a penjing, so it's basically a bonsai within a landscape. And I've got a cactus here which did look really in proportion before, but it's grown too much. And there's some really strange things going on with the roots of this bonsai. So I'm going to go in a bit closer now and show you in detail what's really happening here. So my original idea for this Penjing bonsai was to have a couple of stones in the background, a bit like mountains, a little lake towards the front, which is here with a bridge going over it, and a few houses as well for scale. But the Penjing was to grow over this rock, and you can see the roots have grown over it quite well. But something quite strange has been happening here in the pond section. The pond is actually pushed up, and when I lifted this up I was very surprised at what I saw under here. So when I lift it up, you'll see why it's been pushed up, and it's quite strange. Basically, the tree has grown a massive swollen root, almost like a tuber. I've never really known ficus benjaminas to do this before. They're not really known for their giant swollen roots. There's a few ficus species that do have swollen roots, but certainly ficus benjamina doesn't normally have it. So I'm not sure why this is happening. It's almost like a giant carrot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start excavating some of the soil and see what the root looks like. I also need to reposition some of the ornaments, such as this bridge, and definitely the pond can't be here anymore because there's a giant root in the way. So you can see the weird thing is this is definitely, it's not like it's part of the trunk that's swollen up, because normally on most trees, and same with ficus benjamina, the thickest point is at the trunk right here where the trunk meets the roots, but this one you can see it's actually swollen further down from where it's actually thinner. So it's a thin root coming down somewhere back here and it's swelled up, which is really strange, and it's just like this giant fat tuber. Now I've got a couple of theories as why this might have happened. As I say, I've never seen it before on a ficus benjamina. It's not normally what this species does. My theory is because of how I've been growing this, it's been in a tray that's very shallow, doesn't have any drainage holes, so I have to be very careful when I water this not to overwater it. So in between waterings I normally let this get quite dry. And I wonder if this is maybe some kind of adaptation it started to take on to combat the intermittent watering. So maybe this is kind of acting as a water storage vessel. I'm not sure. I know a lot of other plants with big fat caudex or swollen roots often use their roots to store water, but I've never known it to happen in the ficus benjamina, and this one really has become very swollen. There's not any real other signs of a swelling root elsewhere. There's a little bit of a root swelling on that smaller one there, but generally it just seems to be this one giant root that's come up. And I must say, it does seem to be particularly drought resistant. There's been a couple of times when I've forgotten to water this, and I would normally expect a ficus benjamina to drop all its leaves if it's been exposed to drought. This one has never dropped its leaves from drought, and I've allowed this soil to get surprisingly dry in the past. There's been a few weeks when I've been away and I've forgotten about it, and it's never seemed to be affected by the drought. So it does seem that this is kind of storing a lot of moisture, and that's maybe why it's grown like this. Then maybe I could make this a feature in the future, I'm not sure, but it's going to be quite loosely connected to the main trunk, as it does seem to be quite thin towards the actual tree. I'm just going to rotate it now because it seems to be coming quite a bit further back. So it seems to be originating from possibly this main root coming down here. You can see it's not just that front section over there where the pond was originally, it does go right back to this area. And like excavating it there, you can see there's a bit more of the swollen root there as well. So that seems to be the full length of it now, I think. So you can see that that's probably 10-15 centimeters long, and which is a huge size. It's just like this giant fat underground stem basically that's kind of formed on this bonsai tree, and it starts off round about here and it finishes right past there. So it's quite unusual. As I said, I've never seen this before on a ficus benjamina. Very strange that it's got this big kind of carroty, kind of swollen tuberous root. There's a few side roots coming off it, but not too many, so it does seem to be more of a storage vessel than a feeder root, because if it was a feeder root you'd expect lots of side roots to be branching off, similar to this one on top where there's lots of little side branches, but it's pretty much branched. It's not branched at all, it's just kind of a continuous big fat tuber, a bit like a potato. So as I say, never seen it before. If any of you guys have seen this on a ficus benjamina, do let me know. It's certainly something I've never seen on a ficus tree like this. So I'm just going to cover it up a bit now. I don't want to disturb the roots too much. It probably would be okay, mostly uncovered, because it is quite barky, this this tuber. But I'll just keep it covered up for now, and I'll have a think about what I can maybe do with that in the future. I might be able to very carefully tease this out and expose some more of that, but it doesn't really tie in with the rest of the bonsai kind of theme, because it doesn't match the scale at all with the rest of the plant. So you can see there it's got quite a thin trunk, so to match it in wouldn't make any sense. What I would really like though is if some more of these roots could then start swelling up in a similar fashion to this, and even the trunk, if I could get the trunk to swell up as well, that would be fantastic. I could have a really big fat swollen trunk. It would look like a really good old ancient tree. That was the original idea, was to have this perched atop a rock and have a little pond, and just have it kind of trailing over the pond, a bit like a weeping tree, and have lots of roots exposed. So we see the giant roots, kind of like buttress roots, coming out over the stone. So it started to do that effect, and then I said, as I say, it's got this weird tuber starting, so I can't have the pond anymore, but I can at least have some of these roots, and they are looking quite nice. We've got some decent sized ones now. But the main thing I want to do in this video is give it a really hard cut back. I need to really get it to resprout some new shoots and get it retrained, and hopefully this time I can keep on top of it. I'm not as busy as with work commitments anymore. I'm full-time YouTube now, so I can keep on top of this now and not forget it for as long. So I need to really cut a lot of these branches back. They have got to a nice size, and the structure isn't too bad. So this one's almost in that weeping fashion, same with this. And this small one here, in fact, has barely grown at all. So what I'm going to do is probably completely remove this top one round about this point, keep these two. Hopefully some new shoots will come from the cut mark, and then I can train that down and have it weeping the other way. But if I can have 3 or 4 main branches coming out and then down, that would be ideal. So before I do this, because there's going to be loads of sap coming out of these cuts, I'm going to do any kind of landscaping that I need to do. So I need to reposition this bridge just ever so slightly, make sure it's there's enough of a gap underneath it like that. And this cacti needs a bit of work. As you can see, the cacti is well out of proportion from this little house, and this has to push the little house over, so I need to reposition that house. I probably need to clean it at some point as well. It's starting to look a little bit grubby, just with dirt and soil over time. So reposition that there. I'm just going to heavily cut back this cacti. Interestingly, this cacti stay quite thin towards the bottom and fatter at the top. This is a type of opuntia, and this one does that sometimes, but it does mean that I don't have any overly thick stems, which will be good. So that's the opuntia cut, and I think that looks quite good, a lot better than it did before. It's probably going to send out several new shoots, probably some side shoots, so I'll just see how that does. I might need to give that a bit more of a trimming in the future, and I can always keep a lot of these opuntias. That they make great cuttings, and so I can just put them in the soil once they've dried up a little bit, and they should root away quite nicely. So what I need to do now is start on the pruning process. So I need to put out some kind of cover to catch any of the dripping sap that I'm going to have from this tree. Now, I purposely not watered it for a few days, so it's a little bit drier, so it's less likely for the sap to come pouring out, but it's still going to pour out quite a bit. And with this big tuber here as well, I suspect there's plenty of sap inside the tree waiting to come up, so there's probably going to be quite a lot of white latex coming out of here. So before I cut this, I do need to take off the wires, otherwise I'll blunt my secateurs. That's another thing I've forgotten with this, is because I've left it for too long, the wires have cut into the stem and it has damaged it. Fortunately, the bottom I'd wired that previously and the wires were taken off, so that's not damaged, but the upper branches are damaged, so that'll probably leave scarring for several years, maybe the whole life of the tree, which is a bit of a shame. But I need to take out this wire now, and it's going to cause a lot of bleeding on the sap. But if I don't take out the wire, it's going to continue to constrict the trunk and eventually kill the individual branches that it's wrapped around. So fortunately the wires haven't been in here so long that the bark's completely wrapped around them and completely sealed them into the structure. If they were like that, I'd have to be ripping this out and damaging the trunk even more, but they were very close to that stage. but they have got as far as actually cutting quite deep into the trunk, even if the trunk hasn't started to seal over them. So it's early enough stage for me to take them out of the trunk, but it's too late a stage for me to avoid any kind of serious damage, which is a bit of a shame. Mostly cosmetic damage. The actual trunk's going to function quite fine. The sap will start flowing again quite nicely now that these have been released, but I'll always have this scarring. So when it comes to this tree, I quite like these two branches. I've kept them pushed down with wires in the past, but what I want to do is try and kind of maybe curve some of this down a bit more. So I want to cut this round about here, and then hopefully train in this branch a little bit lower and maybe get some of this growing down. I've got a side branch at the back there, a dead one here, just needs taking off. This side one as well, it's not done too bad, but I'm probably just going to cut this quite hard. Because this is kind of growing out of the little scene I have here. I'm trying to keep most of the branches within the kind of scene of the tray, so this one was coming out a long way, so cut quite a bit off that. I'll see how this resprouts, and I can choose kind of what I want to regrow from that. This one, however, I'm not happy at all with that one. It's coming up far too much, but there is a small side shoot just underneath it down here, which is coming out at a nice angle. So I'm just going to cut it just above that and keep that side shoot. And then I can train this side shoot down. It's already going down a little bit because I had wires on that previously. But looking at this one, I'm going to see, what I might actually do is, this is still coming up a bit much and it's quite thick, so I might cut it off here and just use that one further back as a training branch. And then removing any dead material. So that's certainly got it back down to a better size. Now I'm expecting this to put on a lot of growth because of this hard prune. There's going to be loads of energy stored up in that tuberous root, and all that energy is going to come bursting up. I've cut nearly all the growing tips, so what's going to happen is there's going to be lots of dormant buds which start breaking, and there'll be lots of new shoots coming all over this. I can then choose which ones I want and retrain them into the positions that I want to have them in, and have this nice kind of weeping ancient tree over this landscape. So for now all I need to do is I need to trim this one back slightly. As you can see, it's really too long, and I need to start wiring stuff in. So this one back here, I'm quite happy with that. Maybe just a little bit of wiring just to pull it down further. This one is kind of gone a bit crooked, so I really want to kind of pull that down a bit, make it look a little bit more natural. I'm not sure which direction. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep that one permanently. I quite like this kind of emptier stem and then branching at the top. It looks a bit more ancient, but I'll keep that now. That will just help get a bit more taper on the trunk, and I'll probably get rid of that at a later date and just have it kind of spreading out from the top here. That looks a bit more like an ancient tree than having low down branches. I'm now just going to wire up this trunk, try and bring it a little bit further down, see if I can do the same with this one as well. So I'll pull them slightly further down than I probably want them, because these will naturally ping back up as they start growing against the wire. But I just need to keep tweaking these and keep encouraging them to go further down. This one at the back, it's not too bad, but I'm just going to put a thin wire on that, because naturally what most ficus benjamina shoots want to do is they want to grow up straight. So this will start curving up, especially as that's the highest point. The lower side branches, they often stay weeping, but it's the ones towards the top which start to become leaders and shoot upwards, so I need to have something just to keep that down. So that's those branches now wired in, and they're certainly looking a lot better, I think. Now there's been a lot less sap than I was expecting, so this is probably because I've kept it so dry, and also because it's quite cold where I've taken this from. I've had this in the conservatory, quite a cold position. So that's now fully wired in. I'm quite happy with how that looks. I've managed to, I think, mostly save it from getting too large and out of proportion. The extra growth it did put on, the one side effect it did have, which was quite a bonus, is it's actually thickened up this trunk an awful lot more. That's one technique you can do with your bonsai plants, is you let them grow too big, give them lots of feed, let them grow too big. That will rapidly thicken up the trunk. Just so it means that you can get a thick trunk much faster. The only issue with that though is you do get these points where you get really thick cut off sections of branch, then suddenly going to thinner branches, and that can kind of ruin the aesthetic you're going for. It looks a little bit less natural. But you can kind of compensate for this over time. As this one thickens up, there won't be such a big contrast. Also, I can reduce this back with a special type of pruning shears, and so you won't have that sun lump and then that coming off to the side, and that can just make it tie in a bit more naturally. Same with this one here. I can prune this down and make it look a bit more natural over time. But I'm quite happy with how it's looking now. I was a bit worried that it maybe got too big and out of hand, but it's certainly starting to look a lot nicer. I need to probably work on something with these bright bridges, or get some other kind of ornamentation. As I say, this was originally kind of like supposed to be like a pond, maybe a stream going through with the bridges. This route is too big for that now, so I might need to reposition the bridges, redo the landscape. But I'm going to keep this like this for now, just as this tree is recovering, and then maybe down the line think of reorganising the landscape, maybe some different houses or different locations for the houses, and try and get these bridges so they can actually have some kind of stream going through them. So what I'm going to do with this now is I'm going to put it in a warmer location. It's been in a cold conservatory recently. The warmer conditions and the high light levels will encourage lots of new shoots to appear. From those new shoots I can decide what to do with them, and I'll be able to train them into the new structure of the tree. The general branch work I'm quite happy with. I'm quite happy with these 3 large branches coming off. This lower one I'll remove in the future. It would be good to maybe get a 4th one coming out here, so this could have maybe 4 or 5 or 6 large branches in the future. And then from each of these large branches, I need them to then branch off into smaller branches along their length, and so I can get more of a taper. So as you can see at the moment, it's about as thick here as it is here. If I can get some more branches coming off the side of this, I can get more of a taper and more of a natural appearance where it kind of fans down into several branches. Now the only problem with this Penjing I'm going to have is this ficus benjamina isn't a small leaf variety. As you can see, the leaves are far bigger than the scale of this Penjing. So what I'll probably have to do eventually is to upgrade this Penjing to a bigger saucer, a bigger kind of tray for it to grow in, because at the moment it doesn't really fit with the scale of the leaves. Whereas if I change the scale of the landscape, then these leaves will be much more in fitting with the scale of the landscape if I can make the landscape bigger. So that's all for this update, and I'll give you guys an update in a few months' time when this is resprouting. We've got loads of new material to work with. What normally happens with ficus benjamina is when you cut it back really hard, you get very long, thin stems, quite long internodes as well. That's very flexible, and that's really good for training in. It's very easy to bend them down. You can put them into any shape you want really, because they're so flexible. So that should be the stage we're at in a few months' time, especially with all this energy stored in this root, if it isn't indeed a tuber. I don't know if it's, as I say, an adaptation to drought, or if it's possibly some kind of disease that's starting to thicken up the root, but it definitely seems to be acting almost like a cactus, or like a plant from an arid area, and just using it as a water storage. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you guys in a few months' time.